Morning all and welcome to the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting for the 3rd of March 2021. Welcome to councillors and to staff in attendance. Now call the meeting open at 9 a.m. I don't believe we have any apologies and there are no leaves. There's no leave of absence to be granted. I now call on Councillor Duff to perform the recognition of the traditional owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillors, declarations of conflict of interest. You have the agenda in front of you. Does any councillor have a declaration of conflict of interest on any of those matters? Councillor Jones?
Yes, Mr Mayor, item 6.2, Bunya Mountains Road. I'd like a declarable interest there.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. If that's a declarable conflict of interest, would you like that to be put to the chamber, or are you suggesting that you'll leave the meeting and stay away voluntarily?
Option 2.1, Mr Mayor, may participate in the decision about the matter, including by voting on the matter, or must leave the meeting, including any areas set aside for the public, and stay away from the meeting while the eligible councillors discuss and vote on the matter. So I would prefer to say a few words prior and leave the meeting and let you guys vote on it, whether I stay or come back in. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Jones, Mr CEO, can't see a problem there. It's a declarable conflict of interest.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Well, the councillor's declaring it. So we understand, so we're clear that you wish to participate in the decision in relation to the matter, and you're acknowledging that eligible councillors must now determine, pursuant to Section 150 ES of the Act, whether you stay. Correct?
That's correct.
And you would
My
need
apologies for not reading that.
That's right. You would need also to advise the council what your interest is and why you would like to stay.
Do we do that now, or do I do that? Do it now?
Go ahead and do it now. Thanks, Councillor Jones.
My declarable interest, Mr Mayor, is that I am a director of a company that owns a Maidenwell Hotel on the intersection of Kingroy Kuya Road and Bunya Mountains Road. And that company has had the hotel leased out since September 2016. The roadworks that is to be discussed in future is approximately 12 kilometres northwest from the hotel on the Bunya Mountains Road, and has been advocated for since 2001 to be improved for public user safety. And I believe that I have no more greater benefit or loss than any other person in the Maidenwell Bunya Mountains area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Mr CEO, will we now attend to the matter directly?
Ms. Mayor, if there's any others, and then we can deal with that one if that's fine with you.
Yep, that sounds good. So we'll deal with them all now. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to declare a conflict of interest, well, an interest to be noted in the minutes for item 7.2, Bunya Mountains Community Disaster Management Subplan. I'm a member of the Bunya Mountains Community Association. I don't think this interest is a conflict, as my benefit is no greater than that of another person as a member of the committee, but I just wanted it noted in the minutes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Can we please ensure that that's noted? The declarable conflict of interest provisions are such that as a normal member of a corporate association, of a group such as that, as you've suggested, doesn't give rise to a declarable conflict of interest, as you're not an executive member. Mr CEO, please correct me if I'm wrong, but
you are
Councillor
totally
Shoemaker's
correct.
Correct in her assumption.
Yep, absolutely correct, Mr Mayor. So it's in the legislation and the regulations that being a member is not a conflict. It is an interest, but it is not a declarable conflict.
Yeah, thank you. So Councillor Shoemaker is absolutely correct in what she said. If you could have that noted, Linnell, that would be very good for the minutes. Thank you all. So we might now ask Councillor Jones to leave the meeting and we can attend to the item in relation to the Bunya Mountains, Maidenwell Bunya Mountains Road, item 6.2, and his declarable conflict of interest. So to deal with the matter, we'll need to, first of all, normal process would be to get a motion off the floor and then to seek a seconder and then to deal with the matter, Mr CEO, correct? Okay, does any councillor wish to put forward a motion in relation to what Councillor Jones has disclosed to the meeting this morning? Councillor Potter? Joe, light on, Councillor Potter? Yep, thank you.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move a motion that Councillor Jones stay in the room for this discussion. I do believe that his interest is no greater or less than anyone else living along that road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does anyone wish to second? Do we have a seconder for such? Okay, yep, we have a seconder, Councillor Froloff. Councillors wishing to speak for or against the motion. Councillor Duff.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to speak against the motion. I think that as Councillor Jones has declared that he has a partnership or part ownership in the business, that he does have a greater interest than others along that road. So I'd like to declare that I'm going to actually not support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Any other councillors wish to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wondered if council sought any further legal advice or anything that Mr CEO could provide any clarification about in relation to this matter.
Not any specific legal advice about this conflict. The council advised in accordance with the legislation the conflict prior to the meeting, as all councillors are required to do. There's been several similar ones over a period of time that have either gone through a process external to council or council's decided by resolution. Each one has its own circumstance and is to be dealt with. And no, we wouldn't normally go out and seek external legal advice on this matter. We'd just deal with it within the regulations, unless there was a request or some mitigating factor too.
You comfortable with that, Councillor Shoemaker? Yeah. Okay, councillors, anyone wish to speak? Councillor Henson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I don't have a problem with Councillor Jones, and this is stated in his advice of conflict of interest. This has been going on for years, and he's leased the hotel out for some 5 or 6 years now. And this road has been on the agenda for quite some time, so I don't have a problem with him being in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. I guess from my point of view, as one of the 6 councillors deciding this matter, look, I do have a concern that Councillor Jones is a director of a company that has a freehold interest in the property, that the property, as a result of the bitumening of that section of the road, could give rise to an increase in the traffic that would otherwise perhaps flow into the Bunya Mountains through a different path, and that by bitumening that section, it could give rise to further traffic and bring further potential customage past the hotel, which could then give rise to an improvement in the business, the turnover of the business, and then increase the value of the freehold premises by the business becoming more buoyant as such. So I do have concerns that Councillor Jones would be put in a position here that may be less than desirable, where he does actually own the freehold of the building, and it could actually add value to his lease over that building, and indeed the freehold value of that property under these circumstances. Noting that it's the only hotel on that road. All of the other residents on that road, I imagine, would be residents or would be farmers, not cafes or hoteliers as such, in terms of any shared benefit to the broader community. Mr CEO, was there anything you wanted to clarify before we put it to the vote?
It's a procedural matter. I wasn't going to enter the debate if that's... No. So, yeah, no, it's a procedural matter, Mr Mayor, that just needs to be dealt with. The only procedural aspect, again, that has come up, and maybe an answer to the councillor's question too, councillors make the decision based on the information that's given to them at this point in time. Should that information change or be different down the track or not fully disclosed, the reliability remains with the declaring councillor, not the individual councillors making the decision.
Very good, thank you, Mr CEO, for clarifying that. Okay, councillors, let's put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Okay, that's so motion carried. 4 votes to 2. Those in favour being councillors. Have you got that, Linnell? Okay, very good. We've got that covered. Thank you. Can we bring Councillor Jones back in? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Welcome back to the meeting. We'll go on to item 5.1, which is the minutes of the previous meeting held on 3rd of February at item 5. Councillors, any questions in relation to the minutes? Any business arising that you'd like to deal with in those before we put the motion to the floor? If not, I'd hereby move that the minutes of the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting held on the 3rd of February 2021 be received. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. No councillor wishing to speak for or against? If so, those in favour? Passed unanimously, carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'll move on to item 6.1, which is the Roads and Drainage Portfolio Report, found at 16. It's now my pleasure to hand over to Councillor Jones to present his report for this month. Thanks, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And again, it gives me great pleasure to present the Roads and Portfolio Report for the month of March. So the following are current planned works for February and March, or completed through February and may roll into March. So we've got our capital works, Boyee Road at Wheatlands. We have a widen, seal and overlay between Flats Road and Mondule Wheatlands Road, and that will be expected to be completed around April 2021. Kingaroy Transformation Project, Kingaroy CBD upgrade. That's continuing on through January, February, and as you know, or everybody knows, it'll go on for the next couple of years. Mercer Springgate Road, upgrade to the intersection of Mercer Springgate Road and Brights Road intersection to sealed standard. And this hopes to be, well, if it hasn't been completed already, it should be very close to being completion. I was through that area the other day watching the plant and all the men and women working there, and it's been well received in the community, well overdue. Mergen CBD, footpath upgrade, Lamb Street, Mergen stages 2 and 3. We've been going since July 2020 and hope to be finished in March 21. Niagara Road, Bourneside, rehabilitation of existing seal and drainage construction, recommenced work. We had a little bit of a spell there. Our crews had to go elsewhere and recommenced in October 2020 and hope to be completed in May 21. Peterson Drive to Binga, widening existing seal road near Summerfields Lane, started in December 20, hope to be again completed in March 21. Rural Road Nanango, upgrade to bitumen sealed standard. We'll start that project in March 21 and hope to be completed in May 21. Wheatland School Car Park upgrade, December 20 start, February 2021. Should be, I think it's almost completed, if it hasn't been already. And Youngman Street, Kingaroy, construct a footpath from Avoca Street to Oliver Bond Street. Start in March 21, hope to be completed in April 21. Our key highlights, Kingaroy Transformation Project has commenced early February. Work started on Alfred Street to replace old underground infrastructure, replacement curb and channel and landscaping foundations, and starting to get some good feedback coming through there now that people have now started to see the work happening so they can understand what's going on, so that's great to see. Gravel resheeting and heavy formation grade, Hancock's Road, Kingaroy Barkers Creek Road, Kingaroy Burren Down Road, Maidenwell Upper Yarraman Road and Nollers Road will all have gravel resheet and shoulder resheeting and heavy to medium formation grade right across to those particular roads, and they hope to be all completed by April. Our patrol grading, we have Barkers Creek Flats, Brooklands, Charleston, Corndale, Greenview, Hodgley, Ironpot, Mamarambi, Moffatdale, Moondoona, Mergen, Nanango, Redgate, South Nanango, Tingura, Wilkesdale and Marulan. And as you can see there, this is available on our website, the council website. There is numerous roads all there, and we're going right across the region. And again, congratulations to the men and women out there doing the work. Roadside slashing and boom mowing. Again, a number of places we go, Alice Creek, Barkers Creek Flats, Brooklands, Ellesmere, Glendevon, Goodger, Haley Creek, Johnston, Kingaroy, Cumbia, Canoon, Maidenwell, Runnymede, Sandy Ridges, Silverleaf, South Nanango and Taromio, and again a whole list of the roads that are being done, and our crews are starting to catch up there due to the dry weather coming back into vogue. Our capital works, completed works January 21 for noting, bitumen reseal program, bitumen resealing various roads for 2021, Bunya Mountains car park upgrade, reinstatement of Bunya Avenue pedestrian access, upgrade of current footpath and car park. That, I can tell you, has been well received. I was up there doing the corporate plan with Leanne Peterson on Sunday, and every person, man and woman, told me how good that was, that work has been done for the safety of everybody that goes to the Bunya Mountains. Burrow Street in Wandai, drainage improvement works for Wandai Sprints, off-street parking. Our gravel resheeting and heavy formation grade. We have Greenwood Creek Road, Memorandum Gordon Brook Road, Old Yarraman Road, Reedy Creek Road, Silers Road, Silverleaf, Ushers, West Rurulan and Weckers Road. Most of those will have gravel resheet. We have Memorandum Gordon Brook, heavy formation grade and heavy shoulder grade, and Silverleaf Road, reseal preparation, heavy shoulder grading and gravel patching. The Memorandum Gordon Brook Road has been an issue, and obviously it's not exactly what the people of that area want out there, but they are certainly happy with the improvements that work has contributed. Patrol grading, again, we go to Brooklands, Cushney, Dangle, Eastern Ango, Memorandum, Nanango, Wilkesdale, Rulan, Fairdale, that's the end of the patrol grading, but as you can see, another great list of roads there right across the whole region. Our roadside slashing and boom mowing, we've been to Barkers Creek, Bowie, Coolabunya, Hillsdale, Hodgeley, Inverlaw, Iron Pot, Kingaroy, Nanango, Sunnynook, Tabinga, Tarong and Wattle Camp. And our crews continue to do a great job, and there's just a little bit of, got some infrastructure series of rural addressing numbers. And what is rural addressing numbering? If you own or live on a rural property, the property is generally allocated a rural address number. Council assigns an address using a distance-based system. These numbers will be based on how far, in metres, the property entrance is from the road's starting point, divided by 10. The starting point is usually an intersection or junction, but can also be the centre of a town. Odd numbers are given to properties on the left and even numbers to those on the right. Rural addressing is continuous for the full length of the road across local government boundaries, but for roads less than 1,000 kilometres long. Why do we issue rural address numbers? Rural address numbers are issued for ease of property locations, particularly for emergency services. Rural addressing on a council-owned road. To obtain a new rural address, visit the South Burnett Regional Council website via the below link. The South Burnett Regional Council installs the initial rural address numbers, including post and post cap, at no charge. All future requests, including the relocation of a rural address, replacement number or post, incur fees that are outlined in Council's adopted fees and charges. You have the website listed there. And rural addressing on a state-controlled road. For rural addressing on a state-controlled road, the Department of Transport and Main Roads must approve the driveway access point prior to Council installing the numbers. So just a little bit of feedback in that. We do get questions on the odd occasion about rural addressing and how it works and what it's for. And Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that my roads and drainage portfolio for the month of March be received. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff, thank you. Open to questions, comments. Councillors, Councillor Potter.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to ask a question with regards to the rural numbering. Is it true we only give the rural numbers to properties where there are people living, like the houses, or do we give the rural numbers to all the properties along the road? Because what happens if someone buys a property that doesn't have a house on but wants to build a house? Do we give them a rural number? And also, it would be better if they did have a rural number, even if there was not a house there, for emergency service reasons. I've had that put to me from a member of the public. Thank you.
If they don't live on the property and they have a say for cattle yards, for example, emergency services certainly can become an issue for people, so they can apply for the rural address number. Again, it's not solely for people that live and have a residence on their block.
Thank you, Councillor Potter and Manager Kev. Councillors, Councillor Henson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to direct a question at our General Managers or Manager Searle. in relation to road numbers, and they've become a wonderful thing for defining properties and finding properties, who makes the rules with the numbers that they go from certain points on roads, be it crossroads or T-roads or things? And as a classic example, and I'll bring to attention Councillor Duff's number, she is 7195 on the Mandurah-Geelong Road. But her closest, and she's in the South Burnett Regional Council's area, 7195 is the distance from Mandurah, not from Geelong. Where and who makes that decision? Like, one would have thought, being in South Burnett Regional Council, and this happens across the Burnett in several circumstances, that I would have thought perhaps Councillor Duff's number, for argument's sake, should possibly be something like 49 or 8 from Geelong.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I'll just get James to answer that. So generally where we find this will be on the TMR roads, and it'll be due to the change going outside of our region. On our roads, all the changes start and finish within our region. So I'll just let James respond if that's okay.
Thanks, Councillor Henson. In relation to the first item, there is actually an Australian standard around rural addressing. So essentially a lot of our processes and operations seek to conform with that. It is something that is synonymous right across all councils, that they come up with a process that aligns with the outcomes of those Australian standards. But in relation to Mandurah-Geelong, say, you don't necessarily want the address to change if, say, like another local government amalgamation were to occur. They always go from origin to destination, especially with the main roads, that irrespective of where the South Burnett, North Burnett boundary is, the address isn't impacted as a result of that. So they always, and you would see this on the main roads, is that they, with Memorandum Gordonbrook or Memorandum Barkers Creek, where you start and where you finish is usually associated with those localities, but not necessarily a boundary associated with the administration of our area.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a conversation point that's often raised in certain areas of the South Burnett, that you would expect the number to be relevant to the South Burnett area and not our adjoining councils, that's all. It's an interesting point, though. Sometimes confusing when we send somebody to Councillor Duff's, they go 70 kilometres from Geelong, they're halfway, 3 parts of the way to Mandurah.
It is a fair point, and you'll see that with all the main roads that go through our area, whether it's the Diagula Highway or the Bunya Highway, where they start and where they finish, varies. So, the Burnett Highway is another good example where it goes across a multitude of local government areas. So, we just understand where that is, and then we try to align our operations with theirs.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Jones, for the report. There's certainly a lot happening in the area. I just had a couple of questions, maybe through you, Mr Mayor, for one of the general managers or Councillor Jones, if I can. One of my first questions is just in terms of the roads for slashing and the boom and mowing, do we actually, just trying to understand council service level, do we slash and mow every road in the region, or is there a hierarchy that determines what roads we're actually slashing?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. So we slash sealed roads. Generally in the town limits, it'll be the parks and gardens guys, because the works department don't own the zero turns in the front deck. So we have an area where we go to with our slashes. All sealed roads we slash. We don't slash unsealed roads generally, unless there's a good reason. The reason why that is because the graders actually grade through the drain, so it keeps the grass away. With the upcoming assets, workshops and budget workshops, we'll be doing a presentation as part of that around the service levels for slashing on the back of the last standing committee. I think Kevin is up in sometime in mid-March or late March, so we'll be bringing that through as well, so you can fully get an appreciation of how your money's allocated and what you can do and whether you want to increase, which is, I think will help that.
Yeah, thank you. I just, reason for my question, I find with this report, there's so many roads on here, it's hard to actually keep an eye on in terms of how we're tracking around, like, and my thinking is, are there targets or key benchmarks or things that, in terms of the number of roads that we've we've got in the region and the slashing that's undertaken, or something that can sort of inform councillors in a way that we can see how we're tracking. Like, are we exceeding our slashing, or are we? Am I making sense? Yeah, just something, because I find with this report there are so many roads on here, which is great, and you know, you can see that we've certainly a lot of work's happening in the area, but it's hard to tell how we're actually tracking in terms of our performance. Like, are we actually ahead of our schedule, or are we behind? There's some of the things I'd probably just like to see in that regard.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. We'll take that on notice, Councillor, and look to try and get something into the next presentation. I do take your point, because we generally, in previous, we try to do 2 rounds a year through the network. Grading similar, we try to do at least 1 round through the thing, and we can track where we are. What we can do is start to look at putting some markers around that in the grading for those routine programs. Happy to take the feedback and see what we can develop for you.
If that's something, I think that'd just help our understanding as a council in terms of how we are tracking with the programs that are set, and the delivery that's happening in the region. So I appreciate that. My other question was just in relation to also just a suggestion for the report. The Department of Transport and Main Roads, I certainly know there are a lot of roads that are being worked on in our area at the moment with the economic stimulus that's coming through from the state government, which is a fantastic thing. I know there's a lot of confusion in our region between what are state-owned roads and what are council-owned roads. And I just wondered, when Department of Main Roads is actually doing work in our region, is there something they provide us, a report or something like that, that we could potentially table here just for information?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Generally what happens with Main Roads is they will do their own media release, so which, again, the CEO is very keen to pick those up. In all honesty, we are not able to report on their projects in the media. Even when we're doing our own work, so Rogers Drive Roundabout, any works that we do as a contractor for TMR, we are required to have ministerial approval from their ministry in line with their own processes. So, which is probably a little bit frustrating, a little bit difficult compared to our own stuff. Similar to, you'll see the works out there on Youngman Street out there at the moment doing asphalt. What we do, and we did speak with the district director this week, was to try to encourage them to put out further updates on their work, and if we can distribute them further. Obviously, the work between Tingora and Wandai has been a hot topic. I had a discussion with the district director on Monday about that, to make sure that if there are changes to what's going on there, that they need to just, it would be nice to inform the community so that we're on the front foot with that. Because a lot of times people travel on the TMR network and they think it's council actually doing the work, and obviously the DIAG as well. What we can do is we can raise that probably again through the CEO with the district director to see if they can just probably give us more information publicly available. That would be don't disagree with the comment. We get caught in the middle as well. So
I'm just finding, in the community, there's a lot of questions about some of these works that are happening, and I'm not always fully across what's happening in different areas. So, I appreciate the challenges with ministerial approval and alike. And my third question, sorry for hogging the microphone, just in relation to the Kingaroy transformation upgrade, that's a giant project, and it was great to join my fellow councillors the other day, go for a walk along the street and see the work that's being done firsthand. I actually had a meeting with Councillor Froloff just at Utopia the other day, and the water, we had a major issue with a water main, and certainly, going into Utopia for your morning coffee, and you could just see the heartache for that local business who, for a number of hours was unable to operate because they couldn't access water. So it just, for me, highlighted the importance of the work that's being done. That was a small business that potentially missed out on their busiest time in the morning of sales. So it highlights the importance of just how old that infrastructure is. The main going down had nothing to do with the Kingaroy transformation project. It was just something that had happened because of the age of the water infrastructure in town. So certainly recognise the work that's happening there, and certainly see it as a great thing for our region, because small businesses in town certainly can't survive when things like that are happening. So it's a great thing that's happening. I just wondered, with the update and in the infrastructure committee meetings, will there be some sort of report or something around how the project is being managed, what we're up to, how we're tracking, those sorts of things, just so we can keep a solid finger on the pulse. Certainly, there's a lot of things that are going to happen over the next 2 years.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, Alan and I had this discussion the other day. We were definitely looking to put it on from the next standing committee onwards. The big thing for us was probably just getting a little bit of traction through the last 6 weeks so that we've actually got something to send up. What we'll do is we'll have a standard report every month commencing next standing committee, which can give a forward look ahead of what we've completed and what we're up to. And Alan will be along as well, so we can just talk to that for a couple of minutes and whatnot. Just probably for interest for the councillors, we were looking to organise another site tour next Monday at 9:30. If you're available, we were going to try and start putting them on a regular basis too. And if you're available, feel free to come. And if you're not available, that's okay. Jump on the next one just to have a walkthrough. I think the last time was really good just to have a walkthrough and actually get a scope for the work. The guys, just in general, have made really good progress down there at the moment. We've had your comments around the water main is absolutely spot on. So and it's not just there, like we've got issues in Haley Street and we've had issues down near McDonald's. We'll be doing a release about that work soon. It does emphasise the need to replace that infrastructure through the CBD because it's not going to get any better. But what we're seeing is that infrastructure is very, very fragile when you actually start to do works in and around it. So, but otherwise, progress. Unfortunately, for the farmers, it hasn't rained, but the weather has been kind to us from our work point of view. So we're limiting just how much ground we open up in the next month, just in case we don't get caught. But generally, you'll start to see some serious progress down there at the moment, which is good. So, and I just want to just acknowledge that the businesses have been really, really good to work with. We've had a number of them come in and just raise a couple of concerns, and we've responded to those. But it's great that they're actually forthcoming to talk to us if they have any issues, and that's really what we'd like to see going forward, so that we can address whatever we can as soon as we can. So, yeah, no, great question though. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly, I think it's great to have those open lines of communication and recognise and acknowledge the work the team's doing in that space, just to keep talking to each other, because while there'll be a lot of disruption, I think it'll be worth it in the end. So, no, thank you very much. Thank you for the questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to mention that I thought it was great at the meet and greet for the Kingaroy Chamber that the former Mayor Keith was acknowledged as the ambassador for the KTP. I just thought that was a really nice thing for this council to do, and particularly for the Mayor to hand that across to former Mayor Keith. I just thought that was very noble, and just wanted to acknowledge the actions there. Also, I wanted to have it placed on record that the Moffat-Dales State School, I went there to a leadership investiture, and they were just absolutely over the moon with the work that council did to allow a disabled student to be able to attend school there. The council worked around the clock to get that done before school started this year, and they were just so appreciative. So I just wanted to pass that on. That was really, I was really proud to be carrying the Southland Regional Council badge and to see that work and to accept the accolades on behalf of council. So thank you very much. I also just wanted to flag that the Mergen footpath, I know we've gone out to tender for cleaning, but I am getting a lot of negativity around the actual day-to-day cleaning of the footpath, and I'm just wanting to flag that I'm going to move a motion off the floor with regards to footpath cleaning. Thank you.
Right, we'll come back to that, Councillor Duff, once we've resolved this matter. Councillors, any other questions, comments at this stage? I might just managers, if I could just ask a few questions. The page 17, Bayou Road, Wheatlands, that's the widen, seal and overlay between Flats and Monjaw Wheatlands. Will that then complete Bayou Road? Will it then be sealed? Will the full length of Bayou Road then be sealed?
The full length of Bayou Road's currently fully sealed. the project that we're doing currently is widening. That there will still be a section at the start of Baillie that is a narrow width, and that's not currently part of the project.
Just further to that, will say a section to each side of the Wheatland School for, say, that kilometre or in the near vicinity to the Wheatland School, will they both be double lane seals now? I'm just trying to get an understanding as to which section are we doing? Are we doing on the Kingaroy side of the Wheatland School, Manager?
That's correct. Mondure Wheatlands Road, the Kingaroy side of Baillie is where the current project is, and that's widening from the previous project down near Flats Road, and picks up to Wheatland School.
Excellent, thank you. That's been an issue for the community out there, so it's good to see that that's happening. While I'm on questioning, with the Kingaroy Transformation Project, two questions in relation to that. Number one, I see that the excavators are out working. In terms of our procurement policy, have we afforded the opportunity to all of our South Burnett regional-based businesses that have earthworks capacity to quote and have the opportunity to engage in those earthworks that are now being undertaken? It's just really a yes or no, quite a simple question. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, through Mr Mayor, we've gone to the entire panel who is qualified to do that work, which is the Water Main Civil Works, is my understanding. So the entire panel was invited for that.
Yeah, thank you very much, General Manager. And in relation to the additional $2.8 million that Council resolved to fund out of the budget, capital budget, the project moving forward, there was some discussion in a community consultation reference group meeting last time about the fact that some of that was coming from restricted cash. Can I ask the question, and please feel free to take this on notice, how much of that 2.8 million is coming from restricted cash, point A, and point B, what impact will that have on the resealing program for other roads around the region moving forward? Will the resealing program now, the CapEx resealing program, the renewal program that had initially been put in place, will that now be delayed or changed as a result of that additional allocation to Kingaroy?
Yeah, we might take that one on notice, Mr Mayor, if that's okay. Understand there's an RFI that's been lodged for that anyway, so we will be helping put that response together to answer those questions to see which ones they are.
Thank you very much, General Manager. Just also on Rural Road Nanango, I see that that'll be starting soon. I know the residents out there are looking forward to having their road sealed, which is a great initiative by Council. Just the process for engaging and consulting with and communicating with the residents on that road. Obviously, when you're sealing a road, we've got machinery in there and we're putting bitumen down and screenings, and there's a fair bit of work going on. Access in and out of their properties, are we working and communicating with them at the moment about the disruption it'll cause to those residents on that rural road?
Before we commence any project, we'll undertake a media release. In this particular case, particularly if there's concern about the impact it has on residents, we can essentially door-to-door and approach each resident to outline the project. Alternatively, there's the supervisors always on site and more than willing to accept and take on any issues that residents may have during the project.
Thanks, Manager. Just while I'm going here, and as Councillor Shoemaker said, I apologise for taking up so much time on the microphone. On page 18, it makes reference to gravel sheeting and heavy formation grading work. Just keen to understand, of those resheeting jobs there, we've got 5 of them to be completed, it looks as though over March and April. Of that resheeting work, which jobs are undertaken by internal staff, and are any of those jobs go out to contractors, or do we do a lot of that work ourselves, just to get a better understanding of how we resource that heavy resheeting work? And happy to have that come back as a future report.
Yeah, just in regards to this year's gravel resheeting program, and each year is different, and depending on what the capability of council's construction crews are. So just prior to Christmas this year, we did release quite a number of gravel resheeting projects. That particular work had funding attached to it, which expired in December. So there was a big push to get some of those projects done. So we did rely on contractors. Currently, and the way we've programmed the rest of the financial year, we're looking at delivering the gravel resheeting internally, and that's purely based on the capacity of our 4 construction crews that we have within council.
So just confirming, Manager, those 5 jobs, Hancock's, Kingaroy Barkers, Kingaroy Burren Downs, Maidenwell, Upper Yarraman and Nollers resheeting, you're saying they're being done by contractors or being done internally, sorry, those 5 jobs?
The Kingaroy Barkers Creek Road is a contractor, but the remaining are internally with council crews.
Thank you. I might just keep going, Councillor Duff, while I'm on a roll. Just wanting to confirm, do we have all 7 of the slashes? I believe we have 4 internal crews out and 4 internal units out, and we have 3 contract units out. Do we have all 7 slashes out, further to Councillor Shoemaker's question, out on the highways and out on our roads, on those sealed networks, slashing at the moment? Are all 7 out doing that?
I would need to take that one on notice. We are certainly still slashing and doing a lot of work in that space, but I just need to confirm the actual numbers, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And I suppose just in terms of the slashing, I see that Silverleaf Road is being done. Just wanted to clarify, and I know we've discussed this previously in a few days, in the last couple of days, the General Manager, driver lot. The Wondai to Proston Road has some fairly serious high levels of vegetation, not along the entire road, but in certain sections. Just want to confirm that Proston Wondai Road is being done, and when will that be done? And also Boondooma West Road, will that be done? If so, when? Thank you.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I emailed the councillors late yesterday afternoon with the details of that work. So in your inbox, there'll be an email with roads.
Can you share that with us now? Sorry, I haven't checked my inbox.
I haven't got it open with me, Mr. Mayor. So
that's fine, just for the benefit of the community who have been wondering.
Yeah, so those roads are due to be completed hopefully prior to the show. So they'll be continued through. There's Oakenden, there was the one west of Proston. So yeah, so the advice we sent to councillors from myself last night, Mayor, the team have provided some information and hopefully addressed the main areas to the show. The Wondai Proston Road and Proston Street should be finished this week. So, and that'll be a continuation of the Wondai Proston Road outside of the 80 zone as well. Oakenden Road, which is the road to Boondooma, will be completed by the end of next week. And Proston Boondooma will be started the following week as well. And Silverleaf was completed last week so they'll be going flat stick out there to get those roads done.
Thanks very much, General Manager. Just wanted to get out there for the benefit of the community, for people who've been raising the question, being a public standing committee meeting. Thank you very much for that. Good to see that that's happening. I do note in my travels around the region that a number of the intersections, and these are primarily intersections that come into state-controlled roads, we do have guideposts. I notice it must be the trucks or someone going around the corners that take these guideposts out. I've noticed a lot of the guideposts are down on the intersections, and I've noticed that there's a lot of long grass and weeds around the intersections where it would seem, for example, that the slashers can't get in there. We've got those concreted curbs, whatever they are, going around the intersections. Is there any way that we can put in place, or maybe bring a report back to council as to how we can better maintain that in terms of, can we get people to straighten the guideposts for safety reasons? Can we get a boom mower in there that can reach the arm out and slash all those overgrown weeds and grass that are in those intersections? I noticed driving to Mergen yesterday, there's a number of examples of that between Kingaroy and Mergen, and I've noticed it when I head out through through to Maidenwell and places. Is that something we can do, or bring a report back to council on how we can better manage that? I am concerned about traffic merging in off those intersections in the visuals on that. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we would be happy to take that on notice and probably have a discussion with TMR around what options could be available to us on some of those TMR intersections, and then we can come back with further advice through either a future standing committee or through the workshops around slashing.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager. And just my final one before I hand over to you, Councillor Duff, because I know you've had your light on for some time, was I had raised at the TAC, the Transport Advisory Committee, through Councillor Jones several months ago, about what an intersection that still concerns me, and I know concerns certain people in the community because there has been a fatality there, and that's the intersection on Bunya Highway turning into Baramba Road. Now, it was reported that there is going to be the signage, the mobile signage put up there to alert traffic coming through there that it's dangerous when wet. Just wanted an update on to where's DTMR at with putting that in place, because this has been going on for a long period of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Your observations are correct, and I believe there was some advice from an officer from Main Roads at the December TAC meeting that they were looking at putting up that signage. We actually haven't had a follow-up meeting yet. It's due to occur in the next fortnight with the TAC meeting. We'll look to forward your observations around whether that occurred, and if they could provide a response to assist us in bringing some material back to you on that. So yeah, happy to take it on notice and report back at a later date.
Yes, good. Thank you, Manager. Okay, Councillor Duff, you've had your light on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was really pleased to get that email about. I flagged the fact that we've got the Proston show and the Mergen show coming up, and those main entrances into the town were that's the one like Proston Road, that Proston Badimba Road were all they're all needing slashing, but the General Manager was able to say that every one of those roads is going to get done prior to the show, so I was very pleased to hear that. I also have flagged yesterday an issue with Speedwell Abbeywood Road with a bus driver saying that the grass is so high that she's worried it's a safety issue about not being able to see this kids when she's pulling over. So, but that one I sent through as a customer request, but as an urgent safety issue. I also just wanted to ask the question on the back of what Mayor Otto was talking about with the Baillie Road. Is there plans to do that piece into the future that goes off the Wando Proston Road towards the school, that narrow bitumen, to actually complete that whole Baillie section?
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Baillie Road has been a road of significant interest of this council for a fair period of time. Essentially, the delivery of stages of works along that road have been over a number of years, as you would be aware, and we have done a fair component of pre-construction works. So our team has gone and designed all the way back to Wando Proston Road for that single lane section that goes from Flats Road through the floodway back to the intersection. At this point in time, there's no financial mechanism to assist us with delivering on those stages of works, but we're happy to continue campaigning with Main Roads and through the RRTG on being able to deliver those works. There's also works at the northern end towards Silverleaf, that single lane section between Baramba Creek and Silverleaf that is part of the ultimate strategy, I suppose. We're trying to assist with a lot of the movements across the Baillie floodplains out there and getting that out to two lane, I should say. But yeah, it's going to take a fair period of time based on the amount of money that is released through the RRTG and what we can actually achieve on the ground, given the other priorities of the region as well.
Thank you. I'd just like to flag that I think it is to complete that road, and it is a safety issue with that bus, and I guess for us too, it's continuous maintenance. I know we get paid by the Main Roads, but that drop off all the time, it must be a constant burden to council, because every I don't know how often I've had to report that the shoulders need doing. So it would be great if we could continue to advocate for that next section. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Thank you, Manager. Right, if there's no further questions or comments in relation to item 6.1, Mr CEO?
Just for information for all, the KTP discussion before is just an update. So we had the petition also received by the general meeting last week. Was it already? We had hoped to get the report to this meeting, but it's actually, that one was much more finance orientated because of the petition. So there will be a full report on that petition as well, and the KTP will be at the Finance and Executive Corporate Standing Committee. So that will be brought this month. And whilst we're on petitions, Flying Fox, Black Buck Flying Fox will also come back next week.
Thank you, Mr CEO. My question was in relation to the extra $2.8 million and the impact that would there be impact? If so, what would the impact be on the CapEx budget for the next 2 years in relation to resealing across our region? Just a question, will that be included in that report that comes to the Finance and Exec Standing Committee meeting?
The finance, and it's an add-on to that question. That one is particularly in relation to the petition. But certainly with you raising it today and taking on notice, we can have a look at all those aspects, and rather than multiple reports, bring them all back in one if that's suitable.
Yeah, that'd be great if we can, thank you. That'll save me having to seek a second report if we can factor into that report information as to the impact on our CapEx budget, our capital expenditure budget on renewals, as to what was originally planned for resealing across the broader South Burnett region over the next 2 years. How will that be now impacted by the additional allocation to KTP? That would be much appreciated. Thank you, Mr CEO. Okay, councillors, if everyone's comfortable with that, those in favour of receipt of the report? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Jones, you indicate, Councillor Duff, you indicated you had a motion to move off the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move that a footpath cleaning program be brought to the next Standing Committee meeting, including guidelines for businesses to clean their own footpaths.
Right, thank you, Councillor Duff. Before we seek a seconder, Lynelle, have we got that there on screen? We'll just wait to get that up. Okay, councillors, we can see the motion that's been moved off the floor by Councillor Duff. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I would like to speak for this one. I have actually flagged it with General Manager Meehan, and he helped me word it, so it's not like I've just come from left field. The reason I'm really keen on this is because the Mergen footpath is fantastic, except that it's very dirty, and I'm getting a lot of negativity around people wanting to know, like particularly the business owners wanting to be able to clean their section, but they don't know what they can and can't do. They are worried about liability, and they've also worried about what products you can use on that footpath, and so it's just spoiling what is a good news story, I think, because if we could keep it clean, it would be awesome. And so I'm just wanting to, on the back of that, try and fast track getting something happening with regards to what they can and can't do, and also into the future, like a total footpath cleaning program for the whole region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I recently attended the Mergen Business Development Association meeting in Mergen and did have a bit of a look around. I think it's great that there's such an appetite with our local business community to help keep our streets looking really good. I know there is some concern about what kind of products, and certainly from an environmental perspective. I know when we've discussed this before, we've talked about if they wash off into drains, what the risk can be. So I am supportive of a report coming forward. I think it's great that businesses want to help, I think, keep their streets looking really good, that there is that pride in Mergen, and I think you see that across the South Burnett. I also think the work that's been done is exceptional, and I do worry it's going to be some time before we may ever be able to undertake a project like that again. And in the interest of maintaining it and keeping it in great condition, I think it's a good thing that we provide those guidelines for businesses as to how they can help and support council. From a livability and lifestyle, and certainly from a tourism point of view, I think the way our towns, our CBDs looks is really important. And I know it's a key priority in council's draft corporate plan in terms of having our CBDs well maintained. So thank you, Councillor Duff, for bringing it forward. I'm supportive of the recommendation and look forward to the report.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Okay, if no one else wishes to speak for or against, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Before we move on, councillors, I would like to put forward a motion off the floor myself. I'm seeking to have meetings in the near future with ministers and or their representatives, and as such, I'm seeking to have a meeting with a minister or senior representative from the Department of Transport and Main Roads. As such, I would like to move a motion that the committee recommends to council that the mayor make representation to the Minister for DTMR and or his departmental representative for the naming of an appropriate section of the De Aguilar Highway around Blackbutt to Roy Emerson Way. Okay, councillors, the motion's there as presented. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question because I know this has come before a standing committee before, so maybe to GM Meehan, just around how things have progressed with the conversations that council was initially having around Roy Emerson Way. I'm just interested in where we're actually at with some of that. I know council feels really strongly about this proposal. Councillor Jones has certainly talked very passionately about it previously, so just probably keen to understand where we're at from a council position with those conversations.
Yeah, thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question, Councillor. We originally, just off the cuff, we did a report on the previous council to get a resolution to support a petition from, I think the council might correct me, it was the Blackbutt community. It was led by the museum at that stage. Yep. So we did a resolution of council to name that. There had been previous applications made prior to my time in council where they were declined by the department. Once that resolution came through, we drafted a letter on behalf of the mayor at that stage, and we put what, in my opinion, was a very strong case forward to why that section should be named. We were declined by the department again through the minister's office that it didn't meet the TMR guidelines to do that. Since then, we sent a resolution to council to acknowledge that response had been received, and since then it's basically waiting for council to proceed how you want to take it forward. So, yeah, that covers.
Yeah, thank you. I just, so many things happening, it's good just to confirm. So the letter that TMR come back to us and said that our request didn't meet their guidelines, just confirming that, yeah. So Mr. Mayor, certainly your intentions are to go and advocate with the minister. Yep, based on that letter, yes, okay. Yep, on those conditions, yeah, thank you for bringing the recommendation forward, and I wish you well with those conversations. I really do think it would be a good thing for Blackbutton, good recognition of what is a truly incredible Grand Slam champion. I must admit, I have to say, for the chamber, I have had 2 kisses, one on each cheek. and am a huge Roy Emerson fan. So I really do hope that we can get this up for the Blackbutt community and to acknowledge Roy Emerson.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. General Manager?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, if council's happy, I'd be happy to recirculate the letter of application that we made and the response we got from TMR for council's reference.
Council, appreciate that. Yeah, thank you very much, General Manager. That'd be wonderful. Okay, so councillors, we have a seconder there. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll move on to item 6.2. Can be found at 24. And the matter is the Maidenwell Bunya Mountains Road, where we will note that Councillor Jones may stay in the room and participate in the meeting as resolved by Council at item 4 earlier. And in summary, Maidenwell Bunya Mountains Road, of course, is a TMR, Department of Transport and Main Roads, a controlled road of regional significance as shown on the attached map. And the recommendation is that the update report on the Maidenwell Bunya Mountains Road be received for information. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Councillors wishing have any questions or wishing to speak to the matter this stage? No? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
My only question is certainly just through you, Mr Mayor, in relation to TMR's SOI for approval. I just wanted some clarification around the process and what's next, really, please.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll just defer to James. That is, he was on the SOI through the tech group.
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. The SOI is short for a statement of intent. So it's around what's the strategy associated with where the management of Maidenwell Bunya Mountains Road is going to progress with that level of service in the short, medium, potentially longer terms. And just some of the contributing factors that go into why that road does what it does in our region and what is the interest of that back to main roads. So they provide a series of sections in the statement of intent around link and functionality, what are the economic interests, the tourism benefits, the community linkage, the emergency service interests, any public transport or intermodal functions, and intermodals around just the change of transport methods. So essentially they do, so given that it is a main road, they were the ones that drafted this statement of intent. It wasn't council's responsibility in this regard. It's one of interest to us, but we're not in control of how that is to be developed. Basically, the link vision for Maidenwell Bunya Mountains Road is around wanting to have an 8 metre seal and an 8 metre formation up there. So what that means is that they are looking in the ultimate link of that road being a 2-lane sealed road from Maidenwell through to the top of the Bunya Mountains. There's a whole series of other data that's quite technical in all honesty, but for the purpose of today, it is around the SOI does get tabled through the tech committee of the regional road group, and from there we were, from what we could see, and acting on behalf of this council in a technical capacity, felt that it was fairly sound with where the direction of this council wanted to go. So I was happy to support it from a technical point of view and bring it back through the actual regional road group meeting, which I think has since occurred. So from there, we've also looked to also put a funding application in through the RRTG because we need this SOI to complement that. We can't necessarily have it running in isolation. Any sort of works that we look to nominate up there need to align with the strategic intent of that road. So fortunately, we're all on the same wavelength there, and we're certainly working through that at this point in time. It hasn't been subsequently endorsed, but it is looking quite favourable at this point in time around future works up on that road, but also needing to work in with main road standards up there too.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just certainly like to acknowledge the work the team's done behind the scenes. I know this is a priority in our advocacy priorities, the Bunya Mountains Road. Certainly from a tourism point of view, it's a something that just my mind boggles as to why it hasn't been done sooner. And I certainly appreciate the work that's going on behind the scenes to make this a real priority and try to get something done for our region. It's great to hear the update and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Right, thank you all. Okay, there's no further comments in relation to such. Councillors, motion is as presented. Are those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 7.1 is at 26, and it's now our pleasure to welcome Councillor Froelich to present the Local Disaster Management Water and Wastewater Portfolio Report.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Local Disaster Management Group update. The quarterly Local Disaster Management Group meeting is being held on Thursday, the 4th of March of this week. The South Burnett Local Disaster Management Group are currently working on reviewing their Local Disaster Management Group plan and subplans. Stakeholder engagement with the key agencies from the Local Disaster Management Group are being held in early March. Western Downs and South Burnett's disaster management officers have made significant progress on the Bunya Mountains Community Disaster Management Subplan. The subplan is primarily designed to ensure that there is an effective communications between councils, emergency services and the Bunya Mountain residents to assist in community safety. The councils, together with the emergency services, will be holding a family fun day at the Bunya Mountains on Saturday, the 24th of April, 2021, and all community members and visitors are welcome. An information report forms part of the agenda for this meeting. And now for water and wastewater. The following are current and planned works, updated from as of the 15th of February. Capital works for 2021 and current water main replacements are as follows. Youngman Street North, trunk water main replacement. Reen Street, residential water main replacement. KTP, Alfred Street, water main replacement. Haley Street from Hodge to Scott Street, trunk residential water main replacement. And regional replace of 1,000 water metres across the region. Class A recycled water facilities in Wandai, construction of the new Class A recycled water facilities at Wandai and should be commissioning in April. And the SCADA and cybersecurity updates are the replacing of the existing SCADA to regionalised system and should be finished in May. Gordon Brook Dam, the spillway design, should be also finished in May, and the key highlights are as follows. All towns still remain on level 3 water restrictions, and council continues to monitor water storage throughout the region. The current levels are Bunduma 28.1, BP 10.4, Gordon Brook 52%, and Boo Bear 20%. And I just keep going. Reactive work years to date. Council staff have attended 73 sewer requests this financial year, and council staff have attended 572 water requests this financial year. And the completed capital works for noting as follows. Replacement of the reservoir roof in Scott Street and Wandai, the sewer relining of the relining pipe manholes in Wandai, Mergen and Nanango, and the replacement of the reservoir roof at Arana. And infrastructure series. We forgot to bring these things, Steve. Spiral wound sewer relining. Spiral wound sewer pipe technology has been the most widely used product in the Australia pipe renewal market. Since the industry began in the late 1980s, more than half of all the pipes that have been relined in Australia have been relined with this technology. Expander consists of a single continuous strip of PVC, which is spirally wound into the existing pipe via a winding machine positioned in the base of the existing manhole or access chamber. The edges of the strip interlock as it is spirally wound to form a continuous watertight liner inside the host pipe. Once the section of expander liner is installed, a mechanical process is used to rapidly expand it until it fits tightly against the wall of the hose pipe. This minimises the loss of cross-sectional area. The ends of the liner of each manhole are sealed and rendered to the hose pipe, whilst lateral connections are reconnected by robotic cutting. The PVC profile strip is applied to site on spools, so the size of the site footprint is minimal. The profile is available in a range of sizes to accommodate different pipe sizes, and we did have some over at Nananga, but I apologise, we didn't. I didn't think about bringing them over, so I will bring them over one day and show you. It's really interesting. And that. Do you want me to read this about the bunyias on the agenda? Oh, okay. That is my portfolio, Mayor. I'd like it to be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fryloff. We have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillors, questions, comments? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions from me. Certainly recognise that was quite a mouthful around the spiral wound sewer relining, but really appreciate the update. Just wanted to confirm the cost savings by using this technology. Just from a strategic point of view, I think it seems like council has saved significant money through this process. So I just wanted some further clarification around that, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it does have, I suppose, significant cost savings too if you're replacing the whole sewer. Essentially, if you are digging up sewers and the roadways and those things, the reinstatement costs will obviously escalate. By simply putting the relining technology in, that removes that issue and also avoids a lot of the issues with impacting customers' connections. You don't have to bypass sewage pump as well, which is the other big issue. If you're removing the sewer, any sewage connections to that will be interrupted and could be offline for several days while they're replacing that. So that's the big benefit of it. So from a, I suppose, per metre rate in terms of just simply lying the pipe down, it's a very similar to if you're replacing the sewer, except for the reinstatement costs, the bypass pumping to be able to get in there and then the impact on customers. So it's that outside cost directly outside the construction where the savings are made.
And certainly an enormous saving on the disruption too of our community. So thank you. And I just wanted to check, like I see here, reactive work to date for Kingaroy, there's been 26 sewage blockages and 13 other sewage issues. So I just wanted to check, is that sort of common kind of numbers, and you can take that on notice, or are we tracking sort of relatively close to how we normally track with sewage blockages, or are there other issues that perhaps council need to consider?
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Yes, typically when you get dry periods, we end up getting more blockages over time because the roots in the older sewage systems will be creeping into it. So that's generally where the additional blockages come from. Obviously, as we go through and clean the sewers, we also do a lot of CCTV work with the sewer relining as well. So a lot of that is getting cleaned and removed out of the way for them to inspect the sewer, regardless of whether we reline it or not. So that's also improving that side of it. So hopefully the following 12 months it'll be a little bit lower because we have pretty much done a system-wide clean now with that CCTV program. But typically, yes, that's generally why we get an increase in the drier periods, because the trees are seeking water.
Yeah, thank you. And I certainly see that kind of infrastructure. You don't realise how important it is until there is a problem. So thank you. I recognise the proactive work that's happening there with the CCTV and trying to get on top of those issues. I could make a pun, but I won't. The other thing, I just wanted to check, I do this every meeting. I will watch those water allocations and our consumption numbers really closely. I just wondered, I'm certainly keen to start a revolt to sack the weatherman. I'm very disappointed that our region hasn't had the effects of La Nina that we certainly were all hoping for, and I think that hope is diminishing in our rural communities. So my heart is with everybody at the moment who are watching what started out to be really promising crops, and I know Councillor Henshin shares regular photos where we're currently at this point in time. I'm certainly continue to hope that rain may be on its way. But I just wondered, trying to understand our risk of exceeding our current year allocation and just trying to understand, do we do any rainfall modelling or anything to sort of indicate how we may track? I know it may not be very accurate, but just trying to understand our risk of actually exceeding our allocation. And if we were to exceed our allocation, certainly what that means for us is, are there hidden costs or extra issues in that regard that need to be considered? So just trying to understand.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, good questions. To be honest, I'll probably take that on notice and leave that for Tim on that to give a run through on that. He would be a lot better than I in that space. But what the main one that we always look at as our main indicator is just the percentage of allocation that we're granted by Sunwater. I just note to council too, council may not be aware, but there are other priority irrigators that have been allocated from the BP dam, which we are making inquiries to Sunwater now why that has occurred. So I'll just let council know that. So the MP medium priorities have been given allocation there. We believe that they would have, historically, they would have been cut off a long time ago. They are continuing to receive allocation from Sunwater in relation to that, which is why you see the dam coming down faster than what it did last time it was at this level. So Tim will be making inquiries directly on council's behalf with Sunwater for an explanation in regards to that. I just wanted you to be aware of that issue.
Yeah, certainly, thank you. And just recognise how much of an issue this could be for council going forward. So if there could be some more information provided in the next update, that'd be great. Just really trying to understand our risk there and what we're doing to mitigate it. So thank you.
Right, thank you. Anyone else? I've just got a couple of questions, if not. In relation to disaster management, the local disaster management plan for our region, of course, we've been through a pandemic, and pandemics received a little but not much narrative in the previous plan. In light of the fact that we're 12 months into the pandemic, just a question: will there be much more work go into putting a lot more detail in our new local disaster management plan in relation to response to future pandemics?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to note that yesterday, Councillor Potter, myself, Donna and Sarah? Yeah, so we're out in Anango yesterday, and she will be here tomorrow also, won't she, for the meeting? But there is going to be a lot more work going into the subplans and make it easier for the whole community, so they'll be able to get the access in one stop with us.
Probably just to add to that, Mayor, in relation to pandemics, Queensland Health will remain the lead agency. The major part of what the plan is to do for us as an LDMG is to lay out a framework of how those events are managed and who's actually responsible for that. In the case of pandemics, LDMG is very much there as a support role behind Queensland Health. So as far as further detail, I think there will be a base document, but there won't be extensive detail on how pandemics are managed, because obviously we let the Chief Health Officer and Queensland Health provide that basis to us in their framework. So, and generally that's held at the state level through their management levels.
Thank you, Councillor and General Manager. Just moving to item page 28, item Gordon Brook Dam spillway design, expected completion on the work there is May 2021. Can I just ask two questions? Number one, will Council receive a report on the completion of that work as to what it will cost, as to the works that are required and what that will cost? And two, the time frame that Council has to comply with. What's the date? What's the due date that we will have to have that done by? Will those two questions be answered in a report coming to council before June?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take that on notice for Tim. Just in regard to the design, I'm not sure what the status of that is at the moment and what level of design will be completed this financial year. We're happy to bring a report to a future meeting. We'd probably suggest the May standing committee would be an ideal one for us post our capital talks, for us to be able to provide further information in relation to that wall and why it's required. Tim did provide an update to councillors around that induction time, but we're happy to bring that information back and understand too it's a lot to absorb in a couple of weeks, and Tim can talk through the necessary reasons for that. I will highlight that that project will also be discussed through Tim's capital works program development with council, so that these capital projects that come through, particularly these larger ones that have forward financial implications, will also be dealt with as part of the John Perry discussions next week around your revenue models.
So, and based on what you said there, General Manager, are we tracking to have that completed then, that spillway design as indicated here by May 2021?
I'll take that on notice, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is that the first start of this is the feasibility design, and I think Tim has previously reported to council that they've had some difficulties obtaining consultants to be able to design that. So happy for Tim to provide a further update at the next standing committee, and when we can do a future report on relation to the detail of the design for that.
Thank you, General Manager. Further to that, because this issue, of course, is one of a number of issues that go to and have been identified in the feasibility study options analysis report, which is now in the public domain, as is the department's, and I can never think of the name of it, but the Kingaroy water supply security report that I know the department completed, DNR completed before Christmas, and is now public. These issues go to the security and reliability of Kingaroy's urban water supply. I note that Gordon Brook Dam remains at 52%. Having said that, I also note that that was recorded the 15th of February, so that data is 16 days old. I would be keen to obtain more information, certainly understand not today, but I might address this later in the meeting, in relation to where we're at with Gordon Brook we've had hot days, and I imagine the evaporation on Gordon Brook is one of its weaknesses, and I'll be keen to find out further information as to how we're tracking with Gordon Brook's raw water level, and also get information for the benefit of council as to any issues that are popping up in terms of trihalomethane reporting levels, if there have been any incidents reported to the department in that regard. And further to that, just what work we're doing in terms of the design and planning for the off-site storage facility, including the costing around that, and also a process moving forward in relation to seeking permanent allocation of Boondooma for our council, and what a recommended process could be for that, and what the cost of acquiring that allocation, should we be able to do so, would be. So at this stage, I'm not expecting an answer today, because I know that's a multitude of questions there. It's a fairly complex issue, getting the solution to this, but I might just raise it later in the meeting, perhaps as a motion, to seek a report to come forward to address all of these issues might be the way to handle it. But happy to take any commentary at this stage, officers, on any updates around Gordon Brook and off-site storage levels, any THM concerns, but not expecting it today. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we would be happy to bring a report to the next meeting to address those issues where we can, in relation to the status of Gordon Brook Dam. And also, Tim will be talking to council again next Thursday around that off-site storage. Ultimately, it'll come down to our pricing in the end. From officers' point of view, we'll be very much seeking some direction from council of what you would like to do. I don't think anyone actually has a perfect answer when it comes to money and how much it's going to rain and how long the water will last. It's very much a problem that is fairly fluid, but we would be more than happy to provide council with further information on that and seek some direction of how you would like to go forward. We will be providing further information to DNRME this week in relation to the status of that dam, of why we can't construct an RO plant there to utilise that water further, which is based on our discussions around the Kingroy water security. They've asked for further information around why that water becomes troublesome at that, that 50% level. So, and which will basically would be a lead into where council goes next, based on your previous discussions with the department and the ministers in relation to trying to secure additional water.
Is there a time frame, and when do we expect that additional information to be provided to the department, and will that come through to council?
The additional information that they've asked for is in line with the previous advice they've given to council. So we had discussions with them just prior to Christmas around why we're seeking additional water, which is, so was on line with the recommendation to write to the department to bring our water status there. The department's just come back with questions of why you can't construct a reverse osmosis plant. So just understanding why the water becomes troublesome at that below 50. That information will be provided directly by officers to them in line with the previous discussions around. They're essentially asking is, why can't you use the extra 50%?
So officer, again, when will we provide that by, and will that come to council?
No, it won't, Mr Mayor. It'll go directly to officers. Happy to provide council with a copy of the letter.
Thank you. Do we have a time frame?
Hopefully we'll get it away. Hopefully we're aiming to get it away by Friday if we can. If not, it'll be early next week.
Okay, so we'll get a copy to councillors.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Happy to.
And by Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, right, Councillor Henson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just quickly to bring it to your attention in relation to the storage levels in the dams, I watch this very, very closely, as many of you would be aware, in the miles and the travellers that we do, and every other councillor. But just touching on that, and we've got experts in the department that will know a lot more than me, but under the current climate that we're in, these dams are diminishing by between 0.8 and 1.1% per month. So just to give you a quick update, and as I say, I watch this very, very closely, and I note it here in my diary. Each meeting that we come to, Burndooma was 29.2% at our last recorded meeting, and it's 21.8 at the moment, or from the previous figures just taken 16 odd days ago. BP was 11.5 to 10.4, 52.7 to 52 and 20% at Boobie. So I watch those in great interest. So roughly around 1%, and as water levels diminish and water usages increase, those figures speak for themselves as to what's happening in our water storages.
Thanks, Councillor Henson. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor. Probably to GMO May, but look, on the Sunwater website now, the capacity of BP, well, current capacity is 9.3. We had discussions a while ago with regards to our water restriction levels, and I do believe that when this particular dam went down to, when BP dam went down to 10%, we would start thinking about water restrictions and maybe moving up to level 4. I realise that the other dam's only 28.1 at Burndooma, it says here. I haven't checked on the website, but yeah. So is there a talk of us changing purely because of BP dam, because that feeds Mergen and Wondai? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. So apologies to council. I'm going to circulate those water restrictions further with council for forward policy discussions in April. Just in relation to the dam levels, the dam level is one indicator that we use. So that when Tim took you through, we use a multitude of considerations, because what's happened in the past is that, again, it might be at 10.4%, but because you've got capacity in your allocation at BP right now, you're still paying for that allocation, so you won't actually save anything by turning your restrictions on further, because our allocation is quite well. The number one thing that we should be targeting with restrictions is looking at the litres per person per day, and we want to make sure we hit our consumption targets. So that is the main lever that we would look at, so which has become the main driver. And again, when we talk about the restriction signs, if you go into Toowoomba and those places there, we're aiming for 100, 200, or we're aiming for 180, 160. What we're ultimately aiming for is that we have an allocation of water that we are provided annually, and we have a maximum consumption that we can use. We want to make sure the restriction in line is enabling that to happen. Where it's not, that's when we will recommend to council that you increase your restrictions further. So whilst the dams, it's sad that we're having this discussion again, because we've had this 3 years in a row that I've been here around water levels at this time of the year. very much, I think by the end of April, we'll be able to have a further discussion with council how we proceed for the next 6 to 12 months, because we'll know where we are, which is the exact same discussion we had last year. So it's concerning, but we'll continue to monitor that. The biggest thing is with the restrictions going forward is you have enough criteria there to make a good decision, not just have to make a solid decision, if that makes sense.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just certainly I recognise so much we've learned about Kingaroy urban water security and supply over this past couple of years with the MIP, the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund strategy and business case, and certainly the discussions we've had around, you know, if we were to secure more allocation, what that would look like, the learnings from treatment of water at Gordon Brook Dam. There's so much we've learned about water over this last, certainly I've learned in this last 12 months, but I know over the last couple of years, Council's been doing a lot of work in this regard. My question was in relation to, do we actually, knowing that we have all of these risks and now knowing what we know, do we have a Kingaroy urban water strategy in terms of how we move forward as a council? So when we take all of those learnings everywhere that we've been, everything that we've looked at, and actually sit down around a table and look to how we're going to solve some of these problems into the future. Probably one of my biggest concerns is some of these decisions can't be made, as you're saying, ad hoc. I think there is so much information and so much that we've learned. I am concerned. Certainly the MIP did highlight some significant issues for Kingaroy, and we get the updates. Councillor Froloff, I know you watch this very closely, so regularly around the levels and where we're sitting. So I'm hearing you, General Manager Meehan. I just think for this council, probably the discomfort for me personally is that I can't see that strategy. I know we've had all these conversations, we're learning all this information, but we're really not sure what steps to take next. And I see some of these things don't happen in isolation. So probably what I would really like to see our council, Mr Mayor, do moving forward is actually concentrate some time through Councillor Froloff's portfolio to developing a Kingaroy urban water security strategy, in terms of how we look at that permanent allocation, the entire allocation. I know I've shared, it's my view, we would be in a much better position knowing what it costs for those water allocations to stage that approach, you know, the opportunities to get external funding for a lined reservoir at Gordon Brook Dam, you know, how are we going to track? It's not even a project that we've got that we're reporting on here. I think there actually needs to be a real concentrated effort on building a strategy, highlighting what we want to do, and then starting to really concentrate on how we're going to do it, what kind of resources we need. So there's some of my thoughts, GM, and I'd certainly appreciate yours.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, 100% agree. I think that's the great comments. You're 100% right. You've got a number of, we've learned a lot about the network, and to be honest, we've learned nothing but problems about the network since we've started to look at these things. The MIP will deliver, and you'll get a further presentation on the MIP probably prior to the 30th of June. The first part with the MIP is Tim will take you through next week as a line of your infrastructure requirements around fire storage, reservoirs, water mains. I would be more than happy for us to put something in the op plan for next year to probably focus on building, whether it's a water strategy or putting something around that to put those things together so that we can link allocation, network needs. This year, I tell you, and Mark might be able to speak better than me in this space, this is the first time we've worked with John Perry, particularly with finance, to develop a rating model which backs the capital spend and the operational spend. So the whole idea of that is that we don't come in and say, hey, you need all this infrastructure and then here's your rating. The first part of that, and what we did with Susan and the team on the back of trying to get John in to do those rates, is that we start actually linking those conversations together so that you get informed information. So if you say, oh, look, I don't want to spend X amount of dollars in rates, then we can go straight to the program and say, hey, what's your options? So we'd be happy to take that probably a step further in the next operational plan particularly coming out into, I think we've had such a big year trying to learn about our network and water security and those things. I would like to see us develop up probably management plans for each of the schemes, and then you can understand what that is, but also understand probably further costing implications of that over the long and short term, depending on what you do. We would be happy to frame something up for the op plan, councillor, if that's what council wants to do.
Yeah, certainly. I'm fully supportive of that. I really do think we need a real close focus on this and taking all of what we've learned and putting that into action. So fully supportive if we can consider that. I think it aligns with the corporate plan priorities and the work that's been done to date. So yes, I think a key focus on in our operational plan for next year would be key to moving our council forward.
Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on the back of what Councillor Shoemaker has said, I know that at one stage with BPDM where it got very low, that we were actually talking about doing something with the fixed crossing project to try and mitigate the loss of evaporative water. That was about $1 million project, and I don't know where that's at too. So I just think that probably it's not just about the Kingaroy water security. I also think it's about Mergen and Wandai's water security. It's about the big picture. So I'd like to see that strategy expanded out to all of our water systems, and just wanted to have a comment about where that was at with regards to that $1 million project that we had flagged quite some time ago.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. We originally, when the dam got down to about 3.5% or 4%, we started looking for contingency options. We have a feasibility of that project. Once the dam levels came back up, we basically didn't move it into detailed design for council's budget considerations because you had enough allocation. What I would like us to do is probably part of that op plan is identify what are the contingency projects for each of the schemes, and that way council can choose to bring those projects in as you see fit. But we are progressing some of those in the background. Probably not with the priority that we did previously. Obviously, we've had other infrastructure stuff come up in that time, and then we'll be looking to, if we needed to bring those forward, we would then be able to come to council and say, look, we require additional amount of money to bring forward so that we can detail design these schemes. So, yeah, happy to. We would include that in all the schemes so that we have that master plan for each of those, which has contingency options too. So,
You happy with that, Councillor Duff? Thanks, General Manager. Just before we resolve this one, just on that Barker-Baramba allocation, which of course, as Councillor Duff has highlighted, supplies Mergen and Wandai. I note in the report here that usage to date is 520 megalitres out of an annual allocation of 1,750 megalitres. Now, that, by my calculations, means that we've used about 30%. And if one was to extrapolate that on an average consumption, assuming that was the case, that we'll end up using about 780 megalitres between now and the end of the year, at which time the allocation runs out 30 June. That would mean on those numbers that we will have surplus allocation there that won't be used of just under 1,000 megs. So out of the 1,750 megs, we're only going to use under 800 of that. There's almost 1,000 megs for Mergen and Wandai that we don't use. My question is, do we pay, understand that reliability is the issue for both the MPW and the HPW on the Baramba Barkers. Do we pay for that 1,000 megs that we are not using?
yeah, so we still pay I'll take the detail of that on notice. Tim's a better explanator than me. We do pay two tiers, two types of payments. So we do have to pay a minimum allocation fee for the water, is my understanding, Mayor.
Okay, so we would pay for the 1,750 megalitres even though we're only going to use possibly 800. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Is it possible to have that information brought back as to what we pay at some point in time in the future?
Yeah, well, what we might do at the next standing committee is to get Tim to do a run through the allocations again, and then we can just talk about the high priority payments. So the Part A, I think it's Part A, Part B, correct me if I'm wrong. So we can do a run through that. Maybe we'd be happy to.
Yeah, thanks, General Manager. Okay, well, councillors, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? It's okay, so that's been carried unanimously. Thank you all, and thank you, councillors and staff, for that very good conversation in relation to our water issues here in the region. Item 7.2 can be found at 35, and it's the Bunya Mountains Community Disaster Management Subplan. And just go to 35. And so the report seeks to update council on the creation of a community disaster management subplan for the Bunya Mountains, and of course Councillor Fryloff has spoken about the subplans. The recommendation is that the update on the Bunya Mountains Community Disaster Management Subplan be received for information. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Fryloff. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillors wishing to speak? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillors, before we move on to the final item, which we'll have some discussion around it, I thought we'd just continue rolling on if everyone's happy with that. We've got one more item to address, and then we can wrap the meeting up unless there's anything else. Having now dealt with that item, 7.2, I would like, as I inferred previously, to have further discussion in relation to this issue of urban water security, and as such would like to put a motion forward off the floor that a report be brought back to the May 2021 Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting as to issues associated with Kingaroy's urban water supply, including but not limited to, raw water storage levels, trihalomethane issues. It's a bit of a tough one. You can put THMs there if you like, Linnell, sorry. If you want to just put THMs, does that make sense? Trihala. You got it pretty right. Just THMs would be fine. Well, I can't spell it either. THM levels. Progress on off-site storage design, and permanent allocation considerations. Permanent allocation considerations with a view to including in the 21/22 operational plan a urban water supply strategy for Kingaroy. Full stop. Okay, it's as presented there, councillors. I'd like to now move that. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you all. Okay. Well, sorry. Oh, sorry, Ros, did you have your light on? Sorry. Councillor Potter. Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, so we've that's been carried. We'll move on to the final item, 7.3, which can be found at 37, and it's an application to supply water outside the declared supply area. Just go to 37, and the little bit of the background there, just for the benefit of the community. Councils receive requests for additional water services outside the declared water supply area of the Proston scheme. Council has set the declared water supplied area after detailed analysis in April 2020 and designated the water supply area in accordance with the Water Supply Safety and Reliability Act of 2008. The recommendation is that the committee recommends to Council that Council advise the applicants that Council is unable to provide a water connection as it is outside a declared water supply area designated in accordance with the Water Supply Safety and Reliability Act of 2008, and consider any request received for services outside a declared water supply area annually as part of the declaration of water supply area requirements. So councillors, go one of two ways. We can have a conversation around this before we go to a motion, or we can move it, have it seconded, and then get into the debate. Either way, I guess it doesn't matter. Do we have someone that would like to move that as a motion? Or would you like to? Okay, Councillor Jones has. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Froeloff, thank you. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. I'll open that up now to discussion in relation to the motion. Councillors, anyone wanting to discuss the matter? Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just reading through the information that we've got here, it's and following up on the conversation that's just taken up 15 or 20 minutes in the chamber here at the moment, the importance of water and the shortage that we're getting down to, and the Boondoomba Dam is the supplier for the Proston Rural Scheme. So I've just read through some of this, and I've noted that the applicants, they were initially informed back in February 19, that was advised on the 28th of February 19 that council would allow the connection to occur, with the applicants advising they would be in on the 5th of March to pay. And then you continue reading through the report, and that particular person didn't come in and take up that option. And then in the meantime, we as a council had to move something, boundaries entitled, all properties within the new boundary are entitled to be connected to the scheme under the water supply. Any request to extend the declared area needs to be done equitably and in full consideration of available water supply and system capacity. So if you read through that report, the gentleman in question, I guess, had ample opportunity and didn't take up that through drought. He wasn't doing that. He destocked and all that sort of stuff. And then the other gentleman that come along and also wanted connection was shown a letter of approval, which was no longer current. So also, I just want to highlight that the Heisel standpipe consumed all the remaining capacity in the system at the time of construction. So I don't know that we've got any more water available. We're already 16 connections over allocated. We're 10 in the Heisville area and 6 in the Bluff zone, and they're the areas that we're discussing here at the moment. So I'm quite happy on the information that I have read and available to me at the moment to support that motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Shoemaker. Who was next? Councillor Shoemaker?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just through you, I just had a question further to some of Councillor Jones' comments. It says in the report that council would need to increase the size of existing mains to accommodate supply should eligible properties inside the declared supply area decide to connect. I was just trying to understand the cost in terms of increasing the size of those existing mains, if we were to do that, because as Councillor Jones has said, we're 16 connections already over capacity. So I'm just trying to understand if there's a demand there and if we were to increase it, what kind of costs are we actually talking about here?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. What would happen is if council decided to increase the declared area, we would have to go and do a full hydraulic analysis of that area now and look to, obviously, if the system is at capacity now with its current allocation and infrastructure, if we were to allocate additional properties, we are working on the assumption that would then require a main upgrade of some sort. We would go to a detailed engineering and then have to come back with council for you to allocate money to supply that main where there was a shortfall. The timing of that upgrade would depend on how many are connected and in what timing. But ultimately, if the network is at capacity, we would engage a water and sewage engineer to go there and do a full redesign of that network to ensure that it can be fed and what upgrades would be required from there. But it would be, according to Tim and the analysis that's been done by Morris Water, the infrastructure that's there at the moment is on its limits. It's actually exceeded its limits. So if we were to connect it Obviously, we would need to upgrade to maintain the existing services, but obviously that's more water being drawn through the pipe network, so a lot of the trunk infrastructure would need to be upgraded in accordance with Tim's views.
Because, thank you, and just in return to the, in regards to the report, also reading through, it's my understanding that there is potentially a risk there could already be vacant allotments in the declared area that could come to council requesting a connection, and we would have to honour that because they are in that declared area. Have I got that true and correct?
Yes, you do, Councillor.
Yeah, okay, no, thank you. No further questions from me, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duff.
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, I just have a couple of things. One is that I met with the customer and, well, there's customers, and the issue that they have flagged is that we talk about the declared water supply area, that if you look at the maps, there are people already outside the declared supply area that are actually receiving on the water scheme. And the way that they looked at it was if you brought those, I think it was 1 or 2 properties into the actual declared area, that would then bring their property into the declared area as well. So I think that was one of the anomalies about the whole, why they are not able to get on that, because they're saying that their neighbours are not even in the declared area and they are currently on that supply. And also there seems to be some over the history of this scheme, it seems like if you're in some certain areas that you can actually, because of the size of the pipes, there is allocation, and then because some of the other infrastructure is not up to it, there's no allocation. I would wonder if we could do some sort of a report on the whole Proston rural water scheme into the future, so that we can make some informed decisions on how we might be able to improve the scheme going forward. And also perhaps it's a wonderful scheme for rural producers. I'd like to see that we might be able to, into the future, look at expanding it, or changing the infrastructure to accommodate those farmers here and there that might be able to benefit from it that currently can't. Thank you.
Yeah, did you want to respond, General Manager, to that, or happy to take that on notice?
Apologies. Just in relation to the historical services, there's commentary in the report around that. So historical services are, I suppose, historical. We see them in every scheme. The declared water area is set in line with what the scheme's capacity is, which is detailed in the Morris report. For the second part of your question, just in relation to the Proston scheme, a lot of that work has been undertaken. That's why the scheme boundary is determined the way it is. But I'll just let Steve probably just touch on the 2010 report.
Yep, so in 2010, and this is following on from a couple of discussions with the Highsville community as well, we did actually do a presentation at Highsville related to what upgrades would be required to make sure we could connect the full Highsville area. And that was quite expensive, and that's why that got knocked back at that stage. The community decided that they didn't want to pay that per lot to actually connect. That 2010 report, now obviously demands change, number of connections change, so we'd have to go back and refresh that. But essentially the over-allocation in the southern zone is also considering if, I suppose you could say, the vacant lots within the declared service area. So there's so many vacant lots, if they were to connect and then you add these additional connections to it, that's where the over-allocation comes from. So because we've got to allow those within the declared service area to connect, because they're in that area, we do have the right to connect them. In addition, we also have looked at the northern section. So yes, they're not specifically allocated in terms of the water supply availability. However, the over-allocation of the southern section will be taking, cross-referencing that in a way. Also, just to make note that everything for that scheme does move through a single pump station, single reservoir, etc. as well. So pretty much the whole scheme, including Boston Town, comes out of one point of inflow into that scheme. So that's predominantly where the upgrades would go if you start over-allocating that area. So Stewart River pump stations, Rising Main and Main Reservoir are the first three trunk infrastructure areas that'll be affected by the whole scheme in itself.
Right, thank you, Officer. Councillor Duff, did you have further questions, or did you want further clarification on your question?
Yes, thank you. Just a supplementary question. So, with regards to, you flagged the fact that we did have that meeting with the Hivesville community. Is there a way forward? Like, can we get some sort of a report back to upgrade that the last report, so that we can work out whether we can into the future move forward and get these people some sort of certainty?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we would suggest, probably in line with Councillor Shoemaker's suggestion before, when we go through and do an analysis of the Proston scheme for around its security, we can make some recommendations for further work at that time, if you wish, of what reports might be required, a bit like the Kingaroy one, which we can put into the op plan for next year.
Yeah, you're comfortable with that, Councillor Duff, or further?
Yeah, I am accepting. Could we formalise? You have formalised the Kingaroy one. Could we formalise that through a motion?
We can come back to that later, Councillor Duff, if you choose to, once this matter's resolved. Thank you. Yeah, just so we've still got this matter on the table and in front of us, councillors. Councillor Frodoff, you had your lot on. Did you want to still comment? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Tim and I and Steve did have a meeting with one of the property owners, and yes, he did. He was originally allowed to connect onto the site, but then he didn't get it done within that time. And Hydesville Standpipe, the water usage in Hydesville, has taken up that allocation. I do feel for these property owners, and that we've got 17 sites around the declared water site thing. But the amount of infrastructure, well, number one, we don't have the water. We have not got the water at the moment to give these people, and to upgrade all the infrastructure that we'll have to do if we put them on. And if we do it for one, I'm sorry, but then we'll have to do it for the others. That would set a precedence. So I am going against that no to the connections.
Thanks, Councillor Frodoff. Councillor officers, if I can just ask a couple of questions now. Councillor Shoemaker, sorry, did you want to, before I go, did you want to ask any questions or further? No? Sorry. Yeah, just in relation to these allocations, there's no limit on how much they can use. Is that correct?
As Mr Mayor, no, at this stage it's user pays essentially, and following on the restrictions process. So I believe Tim was developing with that last restriction. Ideally he's doing through is to try and restrict the usage on that as well, but that obviously hasn't been implemented to date.
Well, I am aware of the two customers to whom this report refers. There was one who did not take up an offer in February 19. There is a further customer who's now come forward seeking a connection. So that's an additional application. And I have spoken with the additional requestor, and my understanding is that they were using it for household, they're wanting it for household water and for the garden and to feed a few cattle that they've got around. I would be surprised if they used more than a megalitre a year, maybe 2 at the most, depending on whether they're running their sprinkler or irrigator on for that purpose. Councillor Frodoff, you made the observation that we don't have the allocation to give them, but on my calculations here, Proston Water Supply, they've used 188 megs out of their 500. Now we're 67% into the year. We have a winter period coming upon us. That means if one extrapolates that, they would use approximately 280 megs of their 500 by 30 June, and there would be 220 megs from the Proston scheme not touched, not used, left untapped. Having said that, I understand that it all rolls to the bottom line. And when one looks at the bottom line for the entire Boyne and Toorong pipeline, the current consumption is sitting at 64%, at 67% of the year expired. If one was to extrapolate that, we would end up consuming 1,741 megalitres, and I do note that we're coming into a cooler period, so I'm expecting that the consumption over this final quarter won't be greater than the average consumption because we're not including a summer period now. We're coming into a cooler period between now and 30 June. So if I extrapolate that, even on the worst case scenario, assuming we had hot weather till 30 June, my extrapolations would indicate that we only get to 1740. So in relation to your comment, Councillor Frodoff, that we don't have the water allocation to give them, of 1740, we've actually got an allocation of 1825. That means from 1740, there's 84 megalitres that it looks like we won't use of our allocation if my extrapolation is correct. That is 5% of our allocation from Boondooma. Now, if we would have to connect some 40 users who would have to use that, even at 2 megalitres per household, to use our allocation. So in relation to the first part of the argument, I'm not convinced that we don't have the allocation to give them on basis that they are small users and that we're tracking to not use all our allocation. I'm happy to be corrected and argue this point, but my extrapolations would indicate that we're not going to use all of that unless something changes between now and June on our average consumption month in, month out. The second point I would make here is that there are currently, and you've identified this in a report, users outside the declared area. So we already have piggeries and other users, other households who are outside the declared area and are actually further down the road from where these people are. They're actually to the south of these people. So these people are just on the edge of the boundary, but their neighbours are further away from the boundary and have got water. And we are charging them for that water. So we're happy to charge users who are outside the declared area for water. These users are further away from the approved state government boundary, but we're happy to supply and charge them for historical reasons. But these applicants who are just sitting just off the fringe of the boundary, we're now saying no. I'm sorry, I've got a fairness and consistency issue with that. I've got an equity issue with that. Because we've got users who are a kilometre outside the boundary currently getting water and paying us, and we're happy to charge them for it. These guys are very close to the boundary and we're not happy to connect and supply them. Now, I understand that this issue primarily goes to capacity to deliver infrastructure, mains, etc. So I understand that. But I think we have to be really careful here because, A, we have got the allocation by my calculations, unless there's some major consumption about to happen between now and June, and B, we're actually charging users who are further outside the boundary and we are collecting revenue as a council from them and they are not inside the approved boundary. So there's a fairness and equity issue there. There's also, in my view, is there a compliance issue? We're supplying and charging for water that the state government hasn't approved being inside the boundary. And that might require further investigation in terms of are we actually complying by selling water to people who are outside the defined approved, because this has to go to the government for approval. This is a state government approval. I know we make the recommendations, but the state, the Act, does require that we have these people inside a defined area, and we don't, and we're charging them for it. I'd like some responses to those questions, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just in relation to the consumption, your consumption is inside the allocation at this time of the year. Now, that may change next year. It may change the year after. You also have a standpipe that's placed on that, which will use up a lot of that consumption. So council placed the standpipe when it's done its declared area. So what I would encourage you to do is have a look at the declared area water report, and it explains the detail right back to the 2010 report, which shows the system is above capacity. As an officers, our recommendation to council is that on the analysis that's been done, that consumption could be taken up, and also further restrictions are placed on that through council's new water restriction policy. What I would also say in relation to the historical connections, I believe Tim has provided commentary inside that. Historical connections can be made, is my understanding, outside of the declared area. but they will not be, if they were made redundant, then those connections would not be continued in future. So obviously those connections date back pre-2008. That's why we're supplying water there. We are perfectly legally providing water to those people outside the declared area as they were done before the declared water area was done. So the question on that one around these people that are outside of that is council has a declared area limit that it provides water to. Historical connections are provided, which they are beyond those properties. That was a historical decision of council at the time. Since then, those regulations have changed. If we continue to move water outside the area, council needs to extend the water area. That's essentially what it comes back to. Even with the consumption goes up and down. Kingaroy, for example, we're at 107 litres per person per day. If that was to jump to 200, then allocation would need to be looked at again as well. So the other thing is too, if your standpipe that's on that system as well, if you have rural people come in and start drawing water from that system, obviously that reduces your allocation available to those residents inside there as well. So the analysis that we're aware of has been done as part of the recommendation that was done with the declared water area, and that was supported through the Morris report, which is provided with this one as well.
Thank you, General Manager. Look, General Manager, in relation to what you've said there, you make reference to that, the spare allocation that I talk about could be taken up. I don't think we're expecting that Kingaroy is going to jump from 140 to 200 within the next few years. I mean, we've been tracking around 140 for some time. I understand we've been living in tough times. So we've had drought. I mean, I don't know that our usage is going to increase. People have had to water their gardens through the drought, and when we get rain, they're less likely, I imagine, to use less water. The other point I would make is that, you talked about the fact that the report identifies that the allocation could be taken up. How could that be taken up? What does the report identify as the reasons for that? I mean, you talked about the standpipe, but how long has that standpipe been there for? It's been there all of this financial year, has it not?
Beyond this financial year, yes, it was, Mayor. It was put in with the DCP program. So when we did the Morris analysis of the declared water areas last year, that was taken into consideration when the area was declared, that the consumption that could be drawn through that pipe.
So the unused allocation, you said, could be taken up as identified in the report. Does the report say how that could be taken up if we are not adding any more services?
I'd have to take that on notice, Mayor, to go through it in detail.
Okay.
Yeah, so at the moment, with the reference of the report that we're making as officers is that you've done an analysis based on the allocation that you have, the number of allotments and the use on that system, and the declared water area has been determined on that. The applicants have come, from our point of view, to access outside the water. Our recommendation to council is that it exceeds your capacity inside the declared area, or you change the declared area. That's essentially where we're at. Yeah,
thank you, General Manager. You make a good point. I'm well aware that the declared area is the issue here. I am keen to see a review undertaken as to where should the declared area be to ensure that we're providing water in a fair and consistent manner. It does still concern me that I'm pleased to hear that we're not breaking any legislation or regulation by supplying and charging for water outside the defined area, that there's a clause in the legislation that allows us, as you've highlighted, to rely on historical connections. So I'm pleased to hear that. I was wondering if the government might be requiring us to clean that up and extend the declared areas so we pick those up. But as you're saying, clearly not. So I'm pleased to know that we're not at risk of breaching any legislation or regulations in relation to that, because that was a concern that I had, where we got people well outside the area who are accessing water and we're charging them for it. The other thing, I suppose, just looking at this was in relation to the standpipe. It's made reference that people could access water from the standpipe, but would that not still give rise to additional consumption anyway? I guess that's just an observation. They're going to use the water nonetheless. Okay, look, I've made my points. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly thank you for the extra information. I just wanted to check here. Probably my biggest concern, and I'm thinking based on the conversation that we've had, I'm actually not sure I have all the information to make a decision on this. I just want to confirm, so in the report, in the finance and resource implications, the thing that I guess was concerning for me it says, with respect to the Proston Rural Scheme, the network consists of a small diameter pipelines that were originally designed for an identified area and extension without considerable upgrade within the network is likely to impact service to existing connections. Extension of the water supply scheme could require the upgrade of council's network and require additional purchase of water allocation to avoid further decreases to water security. The point I make, Mr. Mayor, if we can, I'm probably more comfortable in coming back to this with some more information, because could require doesn't mean does require. So I probably just want to clarify, when we say could require an upgrade, is it likely with 2 extra connections that would trigger an upgrade? That's probably what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So not just the 2 connections. So Tim highlights in the report, if you extend for 2, then you extend for the ones that are inside those properties as well. So what Steve is saying there is, if you're adding not just 2 connections, you've got capacity to add the connections. So if the declared area is brought down, all the properties inside that area are rateable for water and sewage. Yep, so what that essentially is, you'll grow your network by obtaining conditions. What we would do then is obviously that is a draw on the existing system. So what Steve is saying, the system is now at capacity. We can't give you the definitive end on the dollar value, but we would then have to go off and do an engineering analysis. And so you've just grown the network. So it's just extending your 6-inch main just became a requirement for an 8-inch main, or could do, which would be on that capacity. So,
I'm just trying to understand, with the vacant land that we have, properties that are paying that water access charge that aren't yet connected, that will also put pressure on the existing network.
yeah, so any person who's inside the declared water area is lawfully allowed to connect to the network. So if we charge you water and sewage rates, and we've had a number of these since Tim's arrived, where we've been charging rates and we've had to go and install these networks. That's why the declared area is so important to us as a network, because it's a bit like your development. You've got a limit to how far you can go to supply that. Yes, there'll be pluses and minuses each year on how much water people use and whatnot. The system is very different to what it was designed for back in the day, similar to Kingaroy, similar to Blackbutt. We're seeing a lot more usage on the Boondooma pipeline, particularly around the overall allocation of those schemes. The engineering analysis, and I fully take on board the Mayor's questions, there was a detailed engineering analysis done by the consultant to recommend the map based on the 2010 report, Steve, that showed what the capacity. So someone has come through and provided a recommendation that was 16 connections over it, whatever it might be. From us as officers, I can't answer the exact question of how that allocation works. I'm not a water and sewage engineer. We've been provided with advice in line with that. The question that's been put to us by the applicants is that they wish to be connected outside the declared area. Our advice to councillors that we recommend against that, due to the fact that you will exceed your system capacity if everyone is connected. You also have a standpipe on that system now, which is obviously well and truly over. So hence why Tim is now talking about recommending to council to make sure that we have restrictions in for these non-potable supplies on the network, to make sure that we've got control of our allocation as well. So exactly what you said before, there's a lot of emphasis on allocation across the network, which we didn't know previously, and this is why these things have come forward. This is why the declared areas were brought in last year, in line with Tim's recommendations, so that we've got limits around this stuff so council can make an informed decision. Any further works inside that area would be done under the direction of council. I would note though that your declared areas are reviewed annually, which was your resolution, so they are due to be reviewed again. Unless there's been a major change to that. What we can do is ask for further detail in line with that report so that council's got that further information. And again, we would be happy to provide further information over the next of how council may grow its declared area if it chooses to through those growth models.
I certainly think that extra information is really important. I just want to, so we originally approved this applicant in February 2019. It fell through because he didn't come in and pay for his application. And then in that time, he's since come back to us in November 2020 to say that he requires the connection now. So it's been some time, and what you're saying is that capacity that was there isn't there now.
Yeah, what happened was the applicant came to council. There was an existing historical one through there. In that time that we were, Tim and was under the impression that there was capacity in the system because we hadn't done this analysis of the work. And in the report, Tim details that we've gone through and complied with the Act to set a declared area of water, but we've also come back and found the previous actual engineering analysis which shows that the system is at capacity. So what happens there is we're not able to extend that historical service to that person because you can't do that. They must be inside the declared area to have a service provided to their property. So you can't transfer a historical service from this person to this person at that time, is my understanding. So that's why the declared water area is determined under the Act, because you've got to stick to the declared water area. Otherwise, people buy a block of land and they say, well, okay, well, you've got to connect me to the water. If they're inside the area, yes, you do.
Yeah. Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the extra clarity. I certainly don't think there's a single one of my colleagues in this room that wouldn't like to give this this person water. Certainly, I think, you know, there is that empathy for the current situation, and I don't believe any one of us wouldn't love to be able to stamp this application and say, yes, please connect the customer. But listening to Aaron and listening to the facts that are put before us, I think I'd probably be more comfortable making decisions about extending the network and adding additional users. And certainly if there is capacity and extra users, as you say, in the area, I'd probably rather come back to that information when we do the review of the declared areas. So I understand the recommendation in front of us. I certainly have empathy for the customer, and I certainly do hope that maybe if we do that review of the declared areas, we can come back and really look at this carefully as to who else in the area we might be able to support, because I recognise water security and our preparedness for drought is a priority of this council. So I feel empathy for the customer in this instance. If only he had have come in back in March 2019 and paid for the connection, you know, things would have been different. But I feel as a councillor, and based on the facts that have been presented here, that I look forward to that review, and I do hope through that review of the declarable areas that we can identify if there is capacity. Certainly I'm all for selling it because council's paying for the water anyway. So, but my biggest concern at the moment is that we just do not have enough information about the network, and if this does trigger an upgrade, you know, it goes to the discussions we've had around Kingaroy's in the same position at the moment where development could go ahead. We know that. There could be growth in our area, but we are constrained by our water network. And, you know, I do think when it comes to forward budgets, capital works, that strategy that we're talking about, these are the things that we need to put on the table for consideration, because I know we're all very keen to grow our region, grow our population, and providing water infrastructure is certainly a core service of council. So, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the additional information.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And I'll come to you shortly, Councillor Duff. Look, I'm a little bit, I'm tending to feel like Councillor Shoemaker. I'm not feeling comfortable with supporting this motion on the basis that I don't believe I have enough information at this point in time. I'm concerned that we made a decision. I understand that one of these two customers was given an approval and then chose not to take it up. The second customer is a new customer requesting. But I'm concerned that, you know, we said 2 years ago in 2019 that you're good to go, that we can supply you with the water and we'll connect you. We're now saying 2 years later, well, no, we can't. Even though we had a 2010 report when we made that decision in February 19. And I'll come to you soon, General Manager. I know now that you've said we've since now relied on that report, and perhaps we didn't look at the report at the time in 2019. I guess what I'm saying is I just don't know where to go at this at the moment. and I think I need further information. I think Councillor Shoemaker's made a really good point. I'd like further information about, I understand that there's a review of the defined areas to come upon us, and General Manager, you mentioned that that'll be happening soon. And if that is going to be happening soon, I'd like to know when it is, and I'd prefer to perhaps hold off on this. For me, I'm not going to support the motion because I'd prefer to have this considered as part of a holistic review of the network. How many initial users, if we were to extend the declared area, where should that extend to? If we do that, how many potential existing connections are in the system? So in other words, how many lots are there? How many titles are there that could potentially want to connect that aren't currently connected? If so, what would be the cost to council's infrastructure of doing so? I think there's a much bigger picture here that I'd like to understand before I say no to these people right now with this limited information that's available. That's my position. Happy for you to correct me, particularly in relation to the fact that we approved it in 19, even though you had the 2010 report at hand at that point in time, and now we're saying no. I'm still confused as to why we would do that, and do we need to do more work on this before we make a decision? General Manager, your thoughts?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still on the lines. Through Mr. Mayor, just on page 38, I asked him the same question. Obviously, you say, what did you say yes, what did we say no? Halfway down there, page 38, when officers were developing the declared water service area, a network modelling report was undertaken in 2010 was discovered, revealing that the Proston water scheme was already over-allocated by 16 connections, and this is why the subsequent applications by the applicants were unable to be approved. So when the original yes came about, we weren't aware of the 2010, hence when the declared water area was done in 2020, they discovered the 2010 report, which was used as part of that analysis. So exact same question. We had why we say yes, why do we say no? That was the reason, cruxly, of why that is. So the system was over allocated, and therefore we can't have an allocation outside the system or give over someone else's historical connection.
Yeah, I understand the issue with the declared area. We can't have an allocation outside the system. I guess if we made an internal assessment in 2019 that it was fine, we're now overriding that with an assessment that's 11 years old in 2010. I understand it wouldn't be out of date because I understand our infrastructure's only gone of age since then. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just feeling as though I need more information, as Councillor Shoemaker's articulated, on the impact on the entire network or the potential for the impact of the entire network. And should we actually be looking at extending the declared area as part of our next review? And if we do that, should these people then be given the opportunity to be included, particularly on the basis that they are just on the fringe of the boundary and there are other people who are well up the road from them who do have water access and we are charging them for it. Anyway, I've made that point, I won't continue. Councillor Duff, you had your light on, so I'd come to you, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Jones, as the mover for right of reply. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not prepared to vote against this. Look, I'm going to vote against this recommendation on the grounds that I believe there is an inequity, and I can't understand why, when we were doing the declared area, why we wouldn't have included those people who are actually on the water scheme, even if you just went around drew a map all around those ones that were already in, that were using water. It just seems odd that you would have a declared area and then a bunch of people outside a declared area. To me, it's, as the Mayor suggested, it's even legally why you would do that. And so then these people are inside that area where we're giving other people water. So I think there's confusion about why we would do the declared area as we have, and also what the future potential of the scheme is. I'd like to see this lay on the table until we get some more information, report come back, and with more clarity around declared area capability of the scheme and potential future use of the scheme. So I'm not going to support it as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. I just want to make one question before I go to Councillor. I will stop then. I'll go to Councillor Jones for the final right of reply. General Manager, in here it said that we resolved at the general meeting in April 2020 the declared areas. You did indicate that that's reviewed annually. I think I saw that somewhere. It's reviewed annually. Right. Would that be the case then that we're due to review it again for the April 2020-21 which is only, what are we now, in March? Is it not only a month away, that review?
Yes, Mr Mayor, that is correct. We have already undertaken the review of the extents to what we planned to do before this issue has arisen. So there are some minor changes involved in that and some additional items that council needs to be aware of moving forward. One of the big items in that, which is listed under the Water Act, is, excuse me, is once you set the declared service area, council is obligated to provide the infrastructure necessary to individually and directly connect each property. So that's where a lot of our issues lie. So there are areas within our declared service area, which is also in the LGIP area, which is part of how our declared service area was there, and there's no infrastructure to actually connect to them. Just recently, council was trying to sell a block of land in Mergen in a property that's in the declared service area, but they couldn't connect to sewer because the sewer hadn't extended to those blocks of land. So those properties can be, if they were sold, can connect because they're inside the area, but council would be obligated to provide the infrastructure straight away to connect them. And there is a substantial amount of additional infrastructure inside the declared service area as well, including Proston, for example, that needs to be looked at to upgrade moving forward. So all that is planned to be detailed into that next review, which at this stage was targeted to try and align with the budget, special budget meeting, because it's also tied up into the rates report in terms of their charges for the declared service areas as well.
Thanks very much, Officer. Yeah, look, if I can just stop you there. So what I'm hearing is that this annual review is due to happen within the next month anyway, and these issues could be considered as part of that in terms of what additional infrastructure, if we were to extend the declarable area, what would be the additional infrastructure required, how many additional potential users could come onto the system who would then become eligible, who are currently not connected, what would that then cost council? I would feel more comfortable making the decision with that information in front of me. At the moment, I don't have that information in front of me, and if it's only a month away, if we're due to do this in April anyway, I would feel more comfortable leaving it to then, and on that basis, I will be voting against the motion. Councillor Jones, right of reply before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. I just want to respond. I don't have any issues with leaving it on the table until we get further information in April, but just in response to some of the comments. Now, those two connections that we're referring to that are further down the road and all that, General Manager, are they they're historical connections?
Yes, that's right.
So they had to be honoured in the survey and all this adoption of the new plan and all that. They had to be honoured because they were historical.
Yeah, that's right. You can't just go and connect their water
That's right.
supply.
So if they're disconnected in the future, they're not to be connected again for any reason if they're outside that designated
That's
area.
right.
Okay, so that's all good and well. The approval was given based on an existing service that supplied a quarry historically and would be made redundant, which at the time was assumed to be spare capacity in the system. That's why this bloke was given the initial agreement. My concern is when we go back and do this review, which I've just noted, I'm happy to wait until April. My concerns are when we go back and we say, okay, yeah, these guys are just on the boundary, and they're inside historical connections. So we're going to extend that. So how far do we extend then? Where do we stop? What happens with a bloke that's 5k up the road and he wants it? What happens to a bloke back this way, 2k's that wants it? How do we control the expanse, or if we look to expand the designated water supply area that we already have, if we allow these two in, if I was just up the road or I was only a kilometre away, I'd be putting up a hell of a fight. I'd want council to supply me with water if they're going to extend that. So all I'm saying is we need to be very careful when we discuss this in the future, because how do you expand? If we do that for these two blokes, where do you stop the boundaries in the future when you want to expand this and incorporate other people? That's just got to be careful. Be careful what you wish for sometimes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, look, strong reply to that, but I'll choose not to. All I'm saying is we should do it through a proper review. And this comes down to what I bang on about in this chamber all the time. Due diligence, proper review. Let's follow proper process and get the information before we rush in and make decisions. I'm only asking council to wait 1 month, but I've made my point. Let's put it to the vote. Okay, so those in favour of the motion as presented?
Sorry.
Councillor Jones, sorry, did you want to just finalise? Yeah, please finalise, thank you.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, my apologies. I would like to just amend the amendment or the motion just to say that we put it on the table and until the review or something like. Can I do that, or have we got to vote on that?
Mr CEO, we've had a fair old debate on it. What do you think?
You've had a fair old debate, but if the consensus of the room is to leave it lay on the table for 1 month, that's its own procedural resolution. So what's been done stays, and you don't amend, you don't touch that. It's a separate procedural resolution to leave it lay on the table until the May standing committee.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, if we could go May, that gives us the April time to go through and get that report through. So
it should be a separate procedural resolution, no debate on a procedural. It's moved seconded, it either gets up or it doesn't. So yeah, that would be, so you would treat it as a separate procedural resolution rather than touching that. Now, if circumstances change because the reports lay on the table, it doesn't mean, so yeah, we can adapt the report if the circumstances change in that period of time. But if not, well then that's the live resolution. So you pick up the debate where you left off.
Thanks, Mr CEO. Yeah, I think that clarifies it. So let's go to the vote then. Those in favour? Sorry? Well, we've got the motion on the table. We've debated it. And as you said, there'd have to be a second resolution. So if you don't want to support this, then go to an alternative motion. That's what we're saying. Or do you want to amend this?
A procedural will override that. It'll just go leave it lay on the table.
We've got a mover and a seconder here, Mr CEO.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. So we can have a procedural to override.
A procedural will leave it lay on the table as is. So when it comes back to the meeting, it will be picked up with a mover and a seconder already.
Okay.
So your procedural stands separate, but it'll override this.
Right.
It's one of the very few times you can have two active resolutions.
Right. My apologies. I didn't realise that we could move a procedural once we had a seconder. Yeah. Okay. I thought it had to be done before we had a mover and a seconder. All right. So that being the case, Councillor Jones, are you wanting to move a procedural motion?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move a procedural motion that we leave this on the table until the May Infrastructure Committee, Standing Committee meeting. Is that correct? Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. All right. Councillors wishing to speak. Oh, well, actually, it's just procedural. So those in favour? Very good. Thank you all. Okay. Carried unanimously. With that, Mr CEO, I don't think we've got any more agenda items, have we? So I'll now call the meeting to a close at 11:32 a.m. Thank you all for what has been a productive and enjoyable conversation, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.